the level of oh, what's this? Oh, okay, sorry. All right. Yeah, the person I'm talking to, right? Not only that, but also strategic competence, which means the appropriate use of communicative strategies. If, for example, I'm talking to someone else, how do I express my idea? How do I find other ways to express my sentences in order to convey meaning, right? And finally, and last but not least, discourse competence, which means cohesion and coherence, how words, phrases, or sentences are put together in order to express a message or a meaning. Before continuing, I'd like to provide a couple of definitions that will be really helpful to understand what pragmatic is. Pragmatics is the way that individuals use language in social context, right? In other words, how to say something, what to say, to whom and when, right? According to Bardovey and Harling, this is the definition of pragmatics. Pragmatics is subdivided into two major areas, which are pragmalinguistics and social pragmatics. Pragmalinguistic, on one hand, is all the linguistic resources, either lexical, morphosyntactics, phonological resources that the student has. And on the other side, we have the social pragmatic, which means the knowledge about the context in which we are going to use those resources, right? The fact that I know pragmalinguistic or linguistic resources does not mean that I handle or that I can have social pragmatics on the other hand. So sometimes this is the difficulties that we can notice in learners. They know how to use rules, they know how to use expressions, but they do not know the context in which those expressions or rules need to be used in order to not sound rude, in order to let's say express a compliment, or in order to say no or refusal or refuse an invitation in some cases. So the lack of this resources will lead us to some pragmatic issues in different contexts. So here I brought a video in which you can see some examples of learners that show a couple of pragmatic issues in context. Let's pay attention to each one of those.
English. It's a universal language. And with globalization of the world's economy, it's becoming even more important to be able to speak English.
Oh, Professor Aldair, we cannot see the video.
Oh, sorry. Can you say it now?
Now it's okay.
Okay, thank you.
English. It's a universal language. And with globalization of the world's economy, it's becoming even more important to be able to speak English. In many countries, English has become an important school subject. However, learning English from a grammar book is not enough. Many students often have a clear understanding of the words, but they cannot understand the real meaning of the statement. This is where intercultural communication can break down. There are language rules that native speakers understand, but you will not be able to learn them from a grammar book or a dictionary. People from two different cultures may talk the same language, but do not always understand each other, or they offend each other.
This often happens in everyday conversation, such as when we ask for something. When you ask someone to do something for you, you should ask politely and your voice should not be too demanding.
Hi teacher, I want you to buy my dictionary.
The problem here is that the student was too direct and too demanding. Let's listen to it again, said politely.
Teacher, would you please order dictionary for me?
Sure, put an order in the library for you.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear the difference?
Another very common problem that causes offence is the way that learners use the expression "of course." Listen to the conversation.
Excuse me, do you know if the chemist is open today?
Of course.
The way the learner said "of course" made the native speaker feel as if he was stupid for not knowing. The learner was trying to be too enthusiastic, but sounded too abrupt.
Students often have problems when they behave as they would in their own country and respond as if speaking their own language.
Would you like a drink?
No trouble, please.
Okay. So how did you stay in Australia so far?
It was good.
The problem you have just seen in this example may not be obvious to you. In some cultures, the guest will refuse a drink the first time, even if they want one, and the host must offer again. However, in English-speaking countries, the host accepts the first answer.
All right. Let me continue here with the PowerPoint. As you notice, those are some examples of pragmatic issues, and that has a cause, right? So there are common reasons why our students behave that way whenever they have to use the language with native speakers. The first reason could be the lack of awareness. They probably understand the language, they know how to write sentences, but they do not create awareness whenever they have to speak to a native speaker. So they do not know what they are doing or what there is the meaning behind those words, right? So there is no tradition of explicit grammatic teaching. This could be another reason. And also because we are living, or most of our learners live in EFL context, we do not have the opportunity to interact with native speakers, right? So those learners' experiences with pragmatic during social interaction might be limited. Also, another reason is that we tend to transfer the pragmatic norms that we know in our first language, and we create a negative transfer whenever we're using that information into a second language, right? Sometimes for students, might be easier to transfer some pragmatic norms that are equal to the ones on the target language. However, in some cultures, such as in Asia, those differences in pragmatic norms between the first language and the second language might cause difficulties, right? There are a couple of things that we can do as instructors, as language instructors. And one of the possible solution, according to Casper and Rose, says that instruction is needed, right? We have to draw the attention of our learners in order to create awareness, and not because they are limited, their exposure is limited in an EFL context, right? In a foreign language context. There are a couple of implications. First of all, teaching metapragmatic awareness, which means the ability to notice the first and second language pragmatic norms. What are those differences? We can use written oral discourse completion tasks, elicitation through role plays. And we can also, since we do not have the opportunity to have a native speaker in every single classroom, we can use audio recordings or clips from internet, and this will be authentic conversation, right, that we're going to use in our classrooms. So here is where the use of technology is important to foster opportunities to create authentic output, interaction, and of course, authentic input. I brought also a couple of activities that will be helpful in our current teaching. For example, this is a role play between the students and professor. The goal here is asking for a letter of recommendation. So we have to set up environment. We have to let them create awareness, telling them that we are talking to a professor, that the relationship might be academic and not personal, right? A professor is not the same as our friends, right? So we create the scenario and then we ask them, what do you say in order to ask for a letter of recommendation to a professor, let's say, for example. There we can listen to their responses, and we will be analyzing that in the classroom and deciding whether what the responses are appropriate or not. We can create a couple of prompts also and listen to the responses, like, do you need to borrow a pen from your classmate? What do you say? Do you need to ask your professor for an extension? What do you say? You have to refuse an invitation because something happened to you, right? And that way we will create the different situations, and they will understand a little bit better how to elaborate their conversations or their speech acts, right? In order to evaluate the speech act according to those authors, they came up with a short description that includes metacognitive awareness and also realizing if the communicative function was realized or if there were linguistic errors, right? So being excellent, we have communicative function that the student fully realized, conforms to target-like expressions, and at the minor category or the poor is the students that do not realize the communicative function, so he probably didn't know how to refuse an invitation, or the expression that he or she said was irrelevant or incomprehensible. To sum up, I'd like to keep this in mind. It is important in order to teach pragmatic. We have to create the ability to understand that the pragmatic norms that we have in the first language are not the same as the ones in the target language. We have to create opportunities for practice. We have to give feedback. Whenever we listen to somebody asking for something and it's been so rude, we have to tell them so they can realize what they are saying. They're using English, probably they're using correct grammar structure, but the meaning is not correct, right? And keeping in mind that we can use authentic materials even though we're teaching in EFL context. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aldair, for sharing with us your knowledge. Now it is time for the questions and answer session. Remember, Professor Nader will enable the microphone, right, Professor Nader, for the questions?
Microphones are ready.
Okay.
If you want to make this more formal, you can raise your hand, the Zoom, you know, and please say your name and raise the hand. That's it. And open the microphone. It's activated now.
Okay, members of the audience, what questions do you have?
Hi, Aldair, welcome. I have a question here. What would happen if professors themselves don't know the pragmatics of the language? And what are the requirements to get at least, I don't know, the basics of pragmatics to be able to teach those things?
All right, yeah, there is a saying that I learned from a professor that says you cannot teach what you do not know. So basically to have the exposure into the language we will acquire a couple of pragmatic norms, and also through, let's say, through grammar, we can also find that knowledge, right? Whenever we're using grammar, we're using words, we know the level of formality if we have to talk in a formal way or in a polite way, right? So there we will find that information that is needed.
Aldair, do you think that maybe a good way of getting that pragmatic knowledge would be to immerse our professors or in a target language linguistic environment, or if that is the case, how long do you think professors we need to get at least the basics?
At least
and at the same time, I would like to know if you had a lot of problems in terms of pragmatics, or whatever we provided you with at the BA program somehow help you survive.
All right, so I will begin with my personal experience. I did encounter a couple of issues with pragmatics in the United States, especially when writing excuses, right? In our culture, we tend to say the whole story, like what happened to us. But my academic advisor just told me, yeah, if you had a stomachache, you only had to say, yeah, I couldn't go because I had a stomachache. You don't have to write the whole story. Like, yeah, yesterday I ate a salad and this happened to me today. That's what, right? Because that is probably acceptable in Spanish, because that is what the norm says in our language. And with the other question, I guess we can read about pragmatics, is since we don't have the opportunity, some of the professors do not have the opportunity to travel and to say an anecdote or to talk to other people that have had the experience. I do believe that we can share with our own experiences, like we're doing today here. We're learning something new, so we know this, and we should create awareness in this sense.
Yeah,
How long should I be exposed in order to get those? There are people that are being exposed for 5 years and they do not even notice what's going on, right? So I guess the first thing that we have to do is create awareness that this exists and these things could happen.
Okay, thank you.
Aldair, welcome again, Professor Eira. Can you listen to me?
Yes.
Okay. In the way that, in the taking into account the experience you already expressed, I would like to know if, would you recommend, I mean, one of, or which educational, in this case, activity, it is more like appropriate, you know, to use in terms of pragmatism? What is going to be, I mean, your recommendation? What do you think about it, those kind of, you know, educational activity? Because we know a little bit about it, or maybe more about it, but which one do you recommend in this topic?
All right, in order to survive, let's say survive, it's important to teach our students how to say no, how to refuse to something in a polite way, of course, not to be rude when requesting something like a letter of recommendation, especially if we are going to be surrounded by professionals in universities. How does that differ from talking to a classmate, from talking to someone that is not educated? We always have to aim for formality, I guess. Because I do believe there will never be wrong if we talk formal, and we will have more problems if we talk in a very rude way or very informal to people.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. Yes, we have to be careful in the way, the tone of voice, you know, the words we are going to use with them in order to give them confidence, you know, to feel comfortable in the classroom environment, even though in some cases we lost the control, especially through the virtuality, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Aldair, you mentioned something about metacognition. How is that related to pragmatic?
All right, metacognition is the ability to understand what I'm doing. If I'm aware that this things happens whenever I'm expressing something, that it might have a hidden meaning, I have to be careful with the things and the words that I'm going to use in order to express an idea or a sentence. Taking into account always the context. Who am I talking to?
Okay, thank you so much.
But I consider that metacognition is a kind of, you know, strong or difficult area, yes? May I right? In
Yep.
terms of pragmatism. Because you know how to analyze yourself, how to distinguish what I'm doing. Well, that's my point of view. I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah, metacognition is just grabbing the attention, like monitor ourselves before doing something.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, no more questions from the audience? It is a very interesting topic, especially, I guess, Aldair, for us that we are teaching we are teaching for English for foreign languages. It means we don't have the context around us. So it is still even more difficult for us as professors and also for our students to learn. So when they travel to other countries, especially, for example, the United States, I guess it is very difficult for them. Because probably, as you were saying, for us, we consider that we are speaking formally or that is the way, but then we have that problem.
Exactly. Yeah, I can recall an experience from a Korean friend. She told me one day like, hey, Jose, I'll see you later. I told her, sorry, hey, I'll see you later. And just to finish the conversation, and she told me, she responded like, yeah, what time? And I was like, what? Yeah, so those things happens, and I told to her, I explained what was the situation. So you say, see you later does not mean that I'm gonna see you later, right?
Exactly.
Okay, poor Koreans. I want to ask you something. Did you analyze the fact that formal grammar or prescriptive grammar compared to descriptive, they are kind of becoming more and more distant? And then one day you may end up saying things that your professors have told you this is ungrammatical. However, that is the way native speakers use the language. So how can we sort of put those two grammars together and teach our students?
I guess we have to aim for replicating activities that replicate real world situations and go in that way, right? And a communicative language approach. We're using language to communicate, so there is where we have to do. I guess the prescriptive grammar has its advantage, and descriptive grammar, when I was analyzing both, I got confused, to be honest, because I learned here in Panama that we have to stick to the rules, right? And whenever you're there, you see things that are ungrammatical for us, but acceptable for them because they care only about communication. If they can convey the meaning, if they can communicate, everything is perfect. No matter if you're using double negative, like in New York, they say, I ain't no food. I ain't got no food. I was like, what?
Yeah. Hard for language instructors, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, if not more questions, we want to thank you, Aldair, for sharing with all of us your knowledge. We are pretty sure that they will contribute for our preparation, our growth, and our understanding. You are creating like an awareness for all of us to consider this topic a little bit more when we are teaching. So thank you so much. And let's continue with our next speaker. Now we will introduce Professor Miguel de Leon. Professor Miguel de Leon has a master's degree in TESOL, teaching English and other languages at Southern Illinois University. He got that degree in 2009. He also has a master's degree in English with emphasis in linguistics, and also he is currently a full professor at the University Centro Regional of Veraguas, and he belongs to the master staff professors for the master degree at Centro Regional de Veraguas. He is the coordinator of the English school, and we are so proud to have Professor Miguel sharing with us the topic, assessing oral communication.
I am sharing, right?
Sure, Professor, go ahead.
Thank you. Communication is one of the most important vital skills that all human beings have. And it gets special attention if it is our job to teach students this skill to communicate effectively on a second language. Thank you, Professor Marilis. I'm Professor Miguel de Leon, and we are going to talk today about how assessing oral communication. We're gonna explain what communication is, the different components of education, and pretty much on a similar track of Aldair. By the way, Aldair, I enjoy your presentation. Thank you very much. I didn't participate because I'm gonna talk about similar topic here. And it's glad to have you as a fellow Fulbrighter. Very proud. So communication, this is a Merriam-Webster definition. You see, we always associate communication with exchanging information, right? Well, through the use of symbols, signs, and even behavior. Communication is divided in two types. We have verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Verbal communication, well, obviously, we usually confuse verbal communication with oral communication, right? So it is divided in oral communication and written communication. So written communication as well is verbal communication because still is transmitted verbally. Nonverbal communication, well, sending and receiving wordless messages, our body language. For example, now I'm wearing my jacket here. So I'm conveying information here. Maybe I'm saying I'm the speaker, especially if we belong to a culture which is a high context culture in which we observe many of the things that Aldair was saying. United States, for example, is a low context culture in which, for example, clothing is not necessarily an important aspect in what you want to communicate. In our culture, it is. So still, nonverbal communication is very important and is part of the communication process. Well, it's not the one that we are going to elaborate on today. So let's go to the oral communication, the components that we have. So we could say that oral communication has a syntactic component, as Aldair was saying. In the case of prescriptive grammar, for example, they say like what is correct and what is not correct, how we should speak using language. It has a phonological component as well, which is pronunciation, how well I pronounce correct English, as we say. A listening component, obviously, because if we are going to communicate, if I'm a sender, someone is receiving. So that person is receiving the messages and needs to be able to understand and decode, right? Language in this case. And obviously, last but not least, a social component, which is the one that Aldair was talking about today. So we need to be careful here because we need to, whenever we are designing our courses, especially if they are oral communication courses, we should implement them all in our programs, in our classes. Then here's a definition of language, because obviously if we talk about oral communication, one of the most important ways to communicate is language. Language is skill that is only an ability, I would say, that only human beings have. And some people argue, yeah, but my dog for sure speaks. He's so smart. But yeah, probably a parrot. You would see animals sharing language. However, you will never hear a dog saying something like, well, my father was very strict, however, a wonderful person. You see, that is something that only human beings are able to say, to create language like that, right? Obviously here, if we go to in a sociolinguistic factor, we would add power here, solidarity, something that we discuss a lot, social status, and those markers, social markers that language has, the one that Aldair was saying. If you say, I ain't got no food, I'm probably associating the way that you speak to a social status, probably ethnicity, or a lower social status. So those markers are those that language have, probably not in this definition, but are something that we could also always add, incorporate. So then we have competence and performance. So here we have Chomsky, for example, this actually from Chomsky, competence and performance. Competence is what we have, what we are able to create, all the knowledge that we have, and performance is obviously the things that we are able to engage on, that to reproduce. So for example, in my competence, right, of grammar, as we're saying, of phonetics, all the knowledge that I have now, can I use it? Can I express it? That would be a different thing. So according to Chomsky, what is important is competence, right? our grammar, which is language in itself, and it has a very prescriptive way. Say like, this is the right way to speak, to use language, right? So this is the way that we should speak, as I was saying. And then Labov says, wait, but we cannot have language so isolated. So we have to have language together with the social factor. So we cannot isolate language from social factor, and then from this social factor is that we have pragmatics, and we could say semantics as well, but especially pragmatics. So how to use language in a context with the implicatures that it have, what is the intention, the purpose of the speaker, right? Now, if you ask me, so who's right? Are you Chomskyans or Labov? I would say both. I mean, as a professor, as a university professor. Why? Because we cannot ignore prescription as professors, especially professors of oral communication, of language, professors of conversation, professions of grammar. So we cannot ignore that. So we have to go prescriptive, right? But at the same time, we have to embrace descriptive language, which is the social part of the language, how native speakers actually use language to engage in situations. And then here we have the pragmatics that Aldair was talking about. So here we have to embrace both approaches. We have a prescriptive approach, as Chomsky does, and then a descriptive approach that Labov does. So in the competence that we were talking about, so that we have the syntactic component, right? So we have to have that grammar, that prescriptive grammar. In our BA, for example, courses, 6 courses of grammar, first, second, and then we finish in advanced grammar. So grammar is something that we cover pretty much individually, right? In our BA program, the program that we have here at Universidad de Panama. Then listening, the listening component is a little bit more problematic, let's say. First, the access that our students have usually is us, right? Professors. So, and the tests that we apply are usually tests of listening comprehension, which is, if you are, for example, if right now you do this, you administer a test, a listening test to us, it will test what we know. So what is our competence? So how much I know, how much I can decipher from implicatures, for example, which is the most popular tougher question. Like, after you hear blah, 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 at the end says like, what did the man imply? And then they give you the questions, right? So that would be comprehension. But then there is something more interesting, that was elaborated by Jackson Richards, which is listening as acquisition. Listening as acquisition must be implemented in our oral communication courses. I'm talking about 180, 280, and 380, and obviously that 480 as well, right? But especially in the first 3, we need to implement that, and also in the technical career, our technical career, because and we have to give special attention to listening in that technical career, because it's exactly what they are going to do, what they are going to perform, right? So what is listening as acquisition? Well, listening acquisition is pretty much a teaching approach, right? Where you present audios, a track, and then we pretty much deconstruct that script. And the main idea is to make our students notice something. So at the beginning, what I noticed from the blah, 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 blah was like, football, Panama, and tonight. That's from the whole thing. That is on my first audio. Then I give you, I add words, vocabulary to you, and I say like, well, how about these new words like playing, like I'm making up things right now, right? Like playing, like wonderful, should, and then once I notice those, I listen to the track again, and then I'm able to recognize more, to notice more and understand more. So meaning that the more I notice, the more I understand. So this is, we have to design activities to foster listening as acquisition, not listening as comprehension, because remember, again, listening and comprehension is what they know. If I apply a test right now to all of us, but acquisition has to do with creating language, making them notice. The more, it's like if in German, like you notice 3 words, maybe you get an idea of what they're saying, but the more you notice, the more you understand. So we need to design, and we will talk about that later. I know we don't have too much time here. Then we go to performance. And here we have a situation in the phonological component, especially in the BA, is that in the professors in charge of this designing our program, they only included 2 courses for this phonological component, which is phonetics in this case, which is first and second year. Once students pass this first and second year, they don't see pronunciation at all. I mean, like we do with grammar. Remember, with grammar, we have 6 courses. Pronunciation, we only have 2. So those professors like myself that teach these courses of oral communication, we need to include pronunciation in our courses. So as part, it's not, because what we usually do in these courses is we go the easy way, which is speeches. And then say like, we're gonna talk about this, or demonstrations. So they're like, okay, so how to cook, and this all we do. But we need to go beyond and include pronunciation. And we also need to know who are those students. I mean, our target students, in this case, they are Latino, they are Spanish speakers. Most of them, I would say, I don't know, I don't have the numbers myself, but I would say that 98 and probably 99, I don't know, % of our students are Spanish speakers. So what's our job? Well, our job is to know or to predict what they need, you see? And there is a lot of information on this topic, on like the troublesome problems that we have, Spanish speakers, in English. For example, something that I can predict is, for example, this voiced fricative z. They won't pronounce it, and they won't replace it by s, and they will say, oh, she has, instead of she has, you see? Or they would say the voiceless fricative, oh, I have, instead of I have, because this is what we're gonna do. As we don't have those voiced fricatives, phonemes, as we don't have them, what we do is we substitute them for the ones that we have. The same happens, for example, with Chinese people, that they don't have the R, and that's why they say el calo instead of el carro. You see, so that's what we do. So our job is to make those predictions and pay attention to those pronunciation issues that Spanish speakers have, that for sure most of our students are going to have, and include them in our assessment, in our evaluation. The problem is that oral communication is not just about speaking right. Then we have accuracy versus fluency, that component. So what do you want? So what is your expectation? So you want them accurate or you want them fluent? And then obviously the answer is going to be, yeah, I want them both. I want a student that is accurate, and I want a student also that is fluent. Yes, that's the ultimate goal, I guess, Aldair, to your question, right? And competent, obviously, right? The problem is that these two, especially in beginner levels, they usually are in contradiction, because if I want to foster accuracy, for example, I'm going to start monitoring myself, and that is going to block my fluency. Or in a more natural way, you say like, well, I become fluent and then I make those corrections, right? Careful here. Well, I would say for our advantage in the BA is that our students, they passed an English entrance examination, right? So it means that when we get these students, we actually have some type of sink or swim model, right? So like, okay, sink or swim, that's your problem. But we are having problems in the technical degree, because the ones that we are taking, the students that we are accepting, are not the ones that are passing and cracking that test. So actually, they are actually the ones that are, I don't want to say the word, you see I'm flouting a maxim here, but they are the leftovers, probably. I didn't say that word. I hope you're not recording this. All right, not the leftovers. They are the ones that are less skillful in the language. But then what we are doing is obviously using the same standards that we use in the BA. And later I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to elaborate more on that. And finally, the social component that Aldair was saying that we need to include in when we design our classes. So we need to understand that we use language inside society and for social purposes as well. And those are the different purposes. Here, listening, which I already talked about. And let's say these are the skills that any advanced listener should include, you see. And see, here are there is a lot to do with pragmatics here, you see. You see, distinguishing emotional from logical arguments, detecting bias and prejudice. For example, here, these are obviously skills that an advanced speaker must have. So we design activities, probably for first, maybe second year, that will be like recognition of words, probably some implicature in advanced conversation. So we go more, we go higher than this, and we analyze discourse. This is what we do in advanced conversation in third year. I was going to tell you something about the technical, but let me see. And here, this is something that I have elaborated a lot previously, which is the different types of speaking, because at the end, it is speaking the one that we value more, right? Like how that all the qualifications that I will give you depend on how well you speak and how successful you are, how well you pronounce things. So like, oh, this is a good student because he speaks well. This is what we say, right? And there's something that I remember that when Professor Cesar once he told me, and something that is true. So like, so different from other careers. So English career the product is something that we can see, that we can hear. You see, because if you are in fourth year, a senior student in the English career, and you can't speak English, so like, what's happening? And that's probably what is happening in the technical as well. So we have three types of talk according to Richards. So interaction, transaction, and performance. So in interaction, we divided in small groups like this. This, I guess it is a small group. We are no more than 20, probably. So I was counting. And then one-on-one conversations, right? So here, it says build upon interpersonal communication skills. What are my interpersonal communication skills? Obviously, this have to do with pragmatics, something that we develop, right? Even there is a type which is a cognitive academic proficiency, which is the one that let me talk to you and you talk to me in this environment, which is an academic environment. On a formal register, as Aldair was saying. So it let me speak this way, but then if you put someone, let's say El Peón de la Finca, here, even though he speaks, let's pretend that this is in Spanish. Even though he speaks Spanish, he wouldn't be able to communicate academically, because this is something that we learn, right? Conflict management. When there is something like, I'm sorry, like Aldair was saying, I'm sorry, what? You see, because I didn't understand what you were saying, the implication. So those students that are competent here, they need, these are the objectives, these are the skills that they should master. So I'm presenting these skills to you so you can read, I'm not gonna read them for you, so you can read them yourselves. And why do I am doing this? For those of us that teach other communication courses, design activities with this purpose, with this objective. You see, in a small group, ask relevant questions, for example. That is something that happens in a classroom. You need to ask relevant questions, right? Here, adapt to cultures, to different cultures, to different groups, is something that we develop. That is an awareness that we should develop, but we need to make activities, design activities to foster this, right? Then the interpersonal communication activities, so has, of course, a social factor. So when I one-on-one, unless it's obviously something related to transaction, which I will elaborate later. But this is the social factor here. Speaking as interaction is probably the most difficult to teach, the most difficult to acquire, because there is a lot of there are a lot of norms, culture norms, age-related norms, gender-related norms that are also part of our culture. So you see, what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Aldair was talking, I remember, well, that the way that we ask for favors or want to be polite, and as we do in Spanish, like Amarilis, por favor, siéntate, o siéntate, Amarilis, por favor. And then Amarilis sits down, and she said, "Oh, Miguel is so polite." However, if you say, if Amarilis is an English speaker, and I say like, "Amarilis, sit down, please," she might be somehow uncomfortable because she's feeling like, so this person is giving me an order, a command. So we have to go indirect. So like, would you mind sitting down? It's okay if you, is it okay if you sit down? So still, like, it's my decision, you see? I'm gonna do it. Thank you for asking. Or can. I remember a friend of mine said like, "Hey, Chris, can you take me to the train station?" And he said like, "Yeah, I can do that." Meaning I still can say yes or no, but that the use of can, very pragmatical, you see, very like, yeah, I can do that. Meaning I'm gonna do it, but still I'm in power. To build relationships successfully, obviously that there is an awareness. You see, like I said, like if you see that someone is Latino and then I fail, the native speaker would understand that maybe there is a barrier. cultural barrier there that is blocking this effectiveness, right? Still, we should work and design activities that encourage that. Here, advanced students should be able to do this. You see, maintain conversations by turn taking, which is totally, this is pragmatics, turn taking, self-disclosure, you see, identity conflict situations, you see, things that we should be able to do. I need to go faster, I guess, I have 5 minutes. Then talk as transaction. Here's where I wanna give special attention. This is for those of you who are teaching the technical degree, this is the focus, transaction, because they go customer service. But we are treating our students, or we expect the same from the BA students, which are going to be teachers, and then this technical that they go for a more type of transaction language. So here you see the focus is what is said and done, not how I said it. I don't care if I offended you. I mean, I should care, obviously. But it is what you say, what is important. Imagine that you go to Russia, you go to Germany, and then someone...
Miguel, Professor Miguel, so sorry, we need like a second part of your conference.
Oh, yeah. So I have my cell phone here. It says that I have 5 minutes. I don't know. But yeah.
Because we remember we need a time for questions and answers. I'm pretty sure that many people would like to ask questions because the topic is really interesting.
Sure.
Exactly.
I was keeping track of my time because as I teach this speech, so I have, it says 25 minutes. So I was supposed to have, well, it's okay. Well, perfect. I'm going to wrap up real quick, Amarilis. So I'm going to share this with you. So the idea here is that we design, but first we need to know exactly what our audience is. The BA is one thing, the technical is something else. All right, and I hear complaints about the technical students. Obviously, they're less proficient, but I'm gonna close here with this. There are several variables here. First, they were not the best candidates. That was the word that I was looking for. They were not the best candidates. The best candidates usually apply for the BA. Second of all, our BA students, they take 4 years with language and they end up like Aldair, right? Great. Technical, 2 years. And second of all, the target, the objective of the way that they speak is different. You see, and that's why I tell my students when I was teaching English course, like, it doesn't matter how you speak. It doesn't matter if you make grammatical mistakes or pronunciation mistakes. What is important is that you can communicate. And this is also applicable to our students from the technical degree, which they usually, the good news is that they will have the tendency to switch to our BA. Well, thank you for having me here today. I will share this information with you. I'll gladly do that. And thank you again. So if you have any question or comment, I'll be glad to attend them.
Yes, pretty interesting your topic. Let me check if okay, pretty interesting your topic, Professor. I'm pretty sure, as I told you, that professors and students are enjoying. And also for professors, it will provide some insights for further studies. And if we have the opportunity to have like a second part, it would be amazing. So now it is time for asking questions to Professor Miguel, please.
Okay, me. Good afternoon.
Hello, Joaquin.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Professor Martiri, I'm sorry.
Yes. Okay, well, as you mentioned, we have some difficulties in the technical career. So what do you recommend for us as professors when teaching listening as acquisition, as you mentioned? What do you think are some specific activities that we can apply to the students, taking into account that they are less skillful students?
The first thing that we need to check is the objective of that technical degree. That was for customer service, and again is transaction, meaning that if I say, oh, Miss Castillo, go to your room 2020. I have the key. At the end, you don't care too much about how I said things, how well I pronounced, how good my grammar was. However, obviously that as I said, the answer to Aldair was the ultimate goal of my students is that they become proficient, right, in the language, competent in the language. But we don't have the time. We have 2 years, and still we see that our senior students struggle, and they have been there for 4 years exposed. So first, the objective of remember that they are going to deal with customer service. They're not going to be teachers, and that's what something I was saying in my presentation, that if you ask me why I ask for proficiency to my senior students, because they are going to be teachers, and the same applies with Spanish professors. So like, oye, ¿qué significa esto? Yo no sé, tú no eres profesor español, pues. Same thing happens to us. I like, hey, Professor Miguel, ¿qué significa esto? I don't know. Aren't you an English teacher? You see? So, but their case is different. So you see, we have to see that Professor Walkiria will have to sit and make a committee to review that, to probably change a few things, reconstruct it. But yes, in listening, which they need listening, obviously to go under that approach, which is listening as acquisition, not listening for comprehension.
Well, so sorry. Yes, yes, thank you, Professor. I guess there's not more time for questions. Yes, so sorry for that, Professor. Now, well, we can quote what Nelson Mandela says, right? That education is the most powerful tool we can use to change the world. And in these conferences, obviously, we are learning a lot. I'm pretty sure that all of us, because I'm including myself, we can expand our knowledge. And with this type of activity, we are increasing our knowledge, and also we can apply those knowledge into practice in the classroom, right? We want to thank all the guests and presenters